Have you ever wondered what would happen if a gigantic snake fought a gigantic shark? Well, we have. Are you really that surprised? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, what if a Megalodon shark fought a Titanoboa snake? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that imagines the impossible. I'm your host, Charlotte Dobre, and if you enjoy our videos, show us some love by smashing the thumbs up, subscribe, and notification bell. And if you haven't watched our videos on the Megalodon shark or the Titanoboa snake, we highly recommend you do so. So who do you think would win in a fight? Make sure you tell us in the comments below. Before I begin this episode of LBQ, I will first be taking a moment to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Fortnite by Epic Games, available for free through the link in the description of this video. Now, you've probably heard about Fortnite before. It's one of the most popular games on the planet at this very moment, and for good reason. But for those of you who don't know what all the Fortnite fuss is about, here's the deal. Fortnite is a battle royale style game available for many different platforms, including mobile, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and Mac. Fortnite is PvP against 100 other players, and the point of the game is to be the last one standing. You can play it both alone, in duos, or with a team of friends. There are destructible environments, buildable structures, and tons of weapons to choose from. Once again, thanks to Epic Games for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out Fortnite for free via the link in the description of this video. The Megalodon shark is an extinct species of shark that lived between 23 to 2.6 million years ago. Titanoboa is an extinct species of snake that lived during the Middle to Late Paleocene epoch and lasted from 66 to 56 million years ago. But what if these two gigantic killing machines happened to live during the same time period, managed to cross paths, and got into an epic battle to the death? Which would win? Let's start with what we know about the Megalodon shark. Firstly, the Megalodon resembled a gigantic great white shark, probably because experts believe they are closely related. It could grow to be up to 82 feet from nose to tail and weighed up to 60 tons. It had a colossal jaw with huge teeth that were 7 inches long and a powerful bite. It could swim at a speed of up to 13.4 miles per hour, and experts believed it attacked its prey from the side, rather than from below like a great white shark. Next up, let's talk about Titanoboa. Titanoboa was gigantic as well. It was the biggest snake to ever have existed. It could grow to be 42 feet long and weighed just over a ton. Titanoboa was a powerful swimmer. It snacked on giant turtles and crocodiles and killed its prey by asphyxiation, like boa constrictors, where it would wrap itself around a victim and squeeze it until it died, either by suffocation or cardiac arrest. Titanoboa spent most of its time in the water. It swam in tropical waters, and if it had existed at the same time as the Megalodon, the two could have theoretically crossed paths. Well, maybe not, but let's not get into technicalities because this is Life's Biggest Questions after all. Would Titanoboa have been able to take on one of the biggest, deadliest predators in the history of the world? Let's get into it. In order for Titanoboa to stand a fighting chance against a Megalodon shark, it would have had to get a devastating bite in, as well as find a way to wrap itself around it. Titanoboa managed to snack on gigantic crocodiles, so why couldn't it snack on a gigantic shark? That being said, Megalodon sharks were immensely huge. They were powerful swimmers and had a streamlined body that could perhaps escape Titanoboa's grip. All it would have to do is thrash around violently and slip through Titanoboa's coils. Titanoboa's weakness in this fight would be its length. As I previously said, Megalodon sharks attack from the side. Snakes are rather long creatures last time I checked, and their bodies are essentially helpless. If a Megalodon shark happened to come across a Titanoboa snake, all it would have to do is dish out a devastating bite to a central area on its body, slicing through internal organs. And considering how big Megalodon's mouth was, it could probably slice Titanoboa clean in half with its 7-inch long teeth. Titanoboas were 3 feet thick at the thickest part of their bodies. Megalodon's mouth was up to 6 feet across, which means the Titanoboa's body could have comfortably fit inside Megalodon's mouth, and there would be still plenty of room for chomp. So there you have it. The winner of this fight would undoubtedly be the Megalodon shark. 60 million years ago, following the mass extinction of the dinosaurs, giant snakes roamed the Americas. The biggest of these snakes was known as Titanoboa, and it was just as terrifying as it sounds. Related to modern-day boa constrictors, Titanoboa was a monster. Thankfully, Titanoboa went extinct. But what if it didn't? That's exactly what we're going to talk about right now on Life's Biggest Questions. A team of scientists found a Titanoboa fossil at an open-pit coal mine in Colombia. The Titanoboa makes modern-day anacondas look like toys. According to fossils, Titanoboa was 12.8 meters or 42 feet long and weighed about 1,100 kilograms or 2,500 pounds. But because snake fossils are extremely hard to find, it's not completely out of the question that it could have grown to be even larger. It's believed that Titanoboa ate large turtles turtles, and Crocodilomorpha, which were essentially giant crocodiles. The Titanoboa lived in what is believed to have been the first recorded neotropical forest that ever existed, where Central and South America exist today. How did Titanoboa get so big? Well, back during the Paleocene era, the Earth was quite a bit warmer. The average temperature of its habitat was on average about 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm climate allowed for cold-blooded snakes to grow very large, much larger than any snake we currently know of. Even to this day, as you move away from the equator, ectothermic animals decrease in size. Titanoboa became the rainforest's top predator, and for good reason. It is the biggest snake to ever have lived. Titanoboa killed its victims using asphyxiation, where it wrapped itself tightly around its prey and squeezed until its prey suffocated. Once you're in Titanoboa's mouth, there is no escape. Row upon row of sharp, curved teeth that point to the rear of its mouth keep the prey moving toward the stomach. Titanoboa slithered around in water and swamps. Thankfully, it began to go extinct toward the beginning of the Miocene era. But now that you know a little about Titanoboa, let's talk about what would happen if it never went extinct in the first place. First things first, because Titanoboa would need to live in warmer climates, it would only be able to survive in rainforests near the equator. This would be good news for everyone who lived farther north or south of the equator. It would, however, mean bad news for any Central and South Americans that lived anywhere near the habitat of the Titanoboa. Indigenous people in the area like the Aztecs and the Incas probably would have regarded Titanoboa as a god and would have made sacrifices to it. That is, if Titanoboa didn't prey on them. Perhaps Incas or Aztecs wouldn't have even existed. As Titanoboa hunted mostly in water, a way for forest-dwelling people to escape it would be to build their homes in trees. The entire history of Central American indigenous peoples might be different. In modern times, there would of course be hunters who would try to track down Titanoboa for various reasons, perhaps even for food. Titanoboa meat would be considered a delicacy, one food connoisseurs would be eager to put on their plates. But catching a Titanoboa would not be easy. Navigating the difficult, swampy terrain of the rainforest would be, needless to say, hard. But one thing you could do to lure it close would be to set a trap. Crocodiles, the Titanoboa's main food source, also lived until modern day. Set a trap with a crocodile and wait for a boa to come to you. Once it devoured its meal, like most snakes, it would be tired and less likely to attack. This would be the perfect time to strike. At the same time, countless books and television shows would be made about the Titanoboa. Nature shows like BBC's Planet Earth would do everything in their power, even risk lives to get footage of it. It's not likely that it would be kept in zoos. After all, it's huge and it would have to be fed crocodiles. No one knows exactly why Titanoboa went extinct. The main theory is that the temperature of the earth began to cool. The hotter the temperature, the bigger the snake. But the same is true for the opposite. This is because in places where the temperature is constantly hot, the metabolism of reptiles operates sufficiently. The bigger a snake gets, the more energy it needs to sustain it. But once the global temperature began to drop, the Titanoboa's metabolism could not adjust, and eventually, it went extinct.
Picture this, the king of all dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the most ferocious beast throughout the Cretaceous period, going head to head against the behemoth of the serpentine species, the most fearsome, the most gigantic creature to have ever slithered across this planet, the Titanoboa. Who would win? What carnage would they create? What havoc would they wreak? Well, let's find out. What if a Titanoboa snake fought a T-Rex? Roll the clip. There are perhaps few creatures throughout ancient history that could stand toe-to-toe with either of these ultimate predators. Granted, they existed during widely differing times on planet Earth and were both ferociously adapted to their environments, but for the sake of this showdown, let's say that these two great monsters met face to face in one epic battle to crown the ultimate beast of the ancient world. The Titanoboa, the monster snake with unparalleled power, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant king of the dinosaurs with a bite that could decimate the most impenetrable of defenses. While the jungle is quiet, the showdown is set, and in the distance comes a mighty roar. Weighing in at a staggering 14 metric tons and measuring over 40 feet in length, the Tyrannosaurus was a bipedal carnivore like no other. It was the last known member of the Tyrannosaurids and was amongst the last non-avian dinosaurs before the Cretaceous Paleogene mass extinction event. You know the one. Rest in peace, Littlefoot's mum. Oh right, you mean the other one. Yeah, that one too. The T-Rex was tearing fools up over 68 million years ago when everything was bigger and much more scary, and it was stacked with a massive skull that packed its primary weapon, its jaw, balanced alongside a long heavy tail. Relative to its large and powerful hind limbs, the T-Rex is most famously known for its, well, its short, stubby little arms. Don't let them fool you though, because they were unusually and notoriously powerful for their size, paired together with two razor-sharp clawed digits used to rip open its prey in close combat. This guy was the undisputed apex predator of its environment and would often feast upon hadrosaurs, armored herbivores like ceratopians and possibly sauropods. The fact that its prey are some of the most well-armored dinosaurs known is pretty telling. The T-Rex was well fed, put it that way. There are also reports that suggest the Tyrannosaurus was a pack animal, suggesting that the T-Rex's large brain to body size proportion was indicative of it being up to 6 times more intelligent than the average dinosaur. Which leads us to our contender, who isn't the average dinosaur at all, but instead the king of all serpents. Measuring in at over 42 feet and weighing in at around 1100 kilograms, the Titanoboa is the largest snake ever found, which existed around 60 million years ago and filled the gap as the dominant species after the dinosaurs faded from the picture. They were expert ambush predators, and the Titanoboa flourished as the most ferocious apex hunter on Earth for over 10 million years. In our showdown then, the Titanoboa would be the likeliest contender to make the first move. If it got the jump on the T-Rex by stealthily slithering in the dense undergrowth of our convenient battle arena, then it would have the potential of ending this showdown pretty swiftly. Now, the Titanoboa wasn't a venomous snake, but like its boa predecessor, was a constrictor snake, a very large constrictor snake. It is believed that the Titanoboa was capable of crushing its unfortunate prey with a force of over 400 pounds per square inch. If it managed to wrap its entire 40+ feet body around the T-Rex, then there is little that the big guy could do other than slowly and painfully suffocate. However, remember those short, stubby arms with the two razor-sharp claws at the end? Well, unfortunately for the Titanoboa, it just activated the big guy's trap card. Some paleontologists suggest that the reason the T-Rex maintained its arms through evolution was as a means to slash its prey at close quarters. They were beveled and deathly sharp and were capable of exerting massive amounts of devastating pressure. Stature alone states that the T-Rex could cleave the Titanoboa with relative ease even when restrained, and at that point the Titanoboa's only means of attack against the T-Rex would be spent, and then the real devastation would begin. The king lizard could inflict up to 12,800 pounds of pressure with a single bite. That's not all though, just a single one of its massive conical teeth could exert a staggering 431,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. The T-Rex could cleave mega herbivores such as the Triceratops with relative ease, and the Titanoboa would be small fry against its colossal jaws. Hey, he's the king for a reason.
The Basilisk, a mythical super snake that can kill an animal with just one look. A Titanoboa, an extinct uber apex predator that ran riot around 60 million years ago. What if this pair of snakes got into a snaky tussle? What if a Titanoboa fought a basilisk snake? What an episode. This is like a high drama snakes on a plane, but without the plane. But with snakes basically the same size as a plane. Oof. Before we slither into this slippery yet venomous video, I want to ask you guys straight off the bat if you're Team Titanoboa or Team Basilisk. Let's start with the long dead but real snake, the Titanoboa. The Titanoboa lived for 2 million years around 60 million years ago, which is actually a very long time on top. The snake is thought to be the largest that ever existed and measured around 12.8 meters in length, so around 42 feet, roughly the size of a house. Good old ancient Snakey also weighed in a hefty amount, around 2,500 pounds, so around 1,133 kilos. Chunky. It was so chunky that at one time it was the largest non-marine creature living on Earth. The Titanoboa was not thought to be venomous and actually was like a much bigger modern day boa constrictor. The Titanoboa was thought to have killed its prey by crushing it with a force of 400 pounds per square inch. Okay, but what about the basilisk? Well, the basilisk is mythical and reports on what exactly it looked like do vary. In Greek, basilisk means little king, and in Greek legend, the basilisk was a small reptile hatched by a cockerel from the egg of a serpent or toad. If it were small like some accounts portray it, then a face-off between the biggest snake to ever exist and a tiny king would be kind of funny. Unless you're the basilisk, of course, because being sat on and crushed by a giant snake 1,000 times your size might be a bit of a buzzkill. The Titanoboa wouldn't even need to really try if the basilisk were a wee beastie. That being said, as as I mentioned, reports do vary, with many saying that the basilisk was actually a giant snake too. It certainly is portrayed that way in Harry Potter, with the snake looking like it could be around 50 feet in length, matching up with the Titanoboa. The basilisk has some key features that the Titanoboa does not. While the venom of a basilisk is exceptionally potent and can kill an adult human, as well as many other large animals, its main weapon is that it can kill it with a stare. That's right, one glance and it is curtains. Living creatures will perish if they look in the eye of a basilisk, and also an indirect look has the ability to petrify, basically paralyze a creature. If both snakes were of equal size, even though the Titanoboa could squeeze harder, all the basilisk would have to do would look at the other snake in the eye, and you know what? It'd be over for the already extinct Titanoboa. Even if the basilisk couldn't get a full look, a side glance would be enough to paralyze the apex predator. If the Titanoboa started attempting the squeeze, the basilisk could bite and inject it with its venom. Whether or not the venom would be enough to kill the fellow snake, it's hard to say. It sure could incapacitate it though. Then, as it is weakened, the basilisk could give the Titanoboa the old looky and finish the job. My favourite way to imagine this fight though is if the basilisk, as some accounts put it, is indeed a tiny king. The little but deadly snake fighting a huge giant fatty boom from the Pleistocene era. I am here for it. That may actually even up the fight, but the basilisk could and should still just about win, so long as it has its eyes open. Maybe it should just flee to higher ground and just stare down the giant snake. That would be the way that I would play it. Oh, it is a showdown, ladies and gents, an apex predator and a Lovecraftian sea menace, the Titanoboa versus Cthulhu. Who will win, the great big snake or the tentacle-faced mind mischief? Isn't it obvious? So Cthulhu is a god/monster invented by author H.P. Lovecraft, who describes him as a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline but with octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly rubbery looking body, prodigious claws on hind and 4 feet, and long narrow wings. So, tentacle face, rubbery but clawy, and wings. Cool. Got ya. Thanks, HP. The Titanoboa was a very real, very scary giant snake that lived for 2 million years, but went extinct 60 million years ago. So before we even fight this pair, what would happen in a battle of looks? Which is the most ferocious upon the eye? I'm gonna be honest, a giant snake is a scary sight, but the Cthulhu is not only terrifying to look at, but has the ability to drive a person or animal who looks at it insane. Oh dear, things aren't looking great for old Snakey, are they? Cthulhu has got into his brain. That isn't even the half of it. Not only will looking at Cthulhu get inside your mind, but the creature can also control minds. That being said, it is also claimed that the Cthulhu can only control those with creative brains. Rational and mundane minds are not said to be able to handle the beast. So, perhaps the primordial snake's simplicity would save it from mind control. So how would these creatures measure up? Isn't it always about size in a fight? The Titanoboa was thought to be the largest snake that ever existed and the largest non-marine creature to ever live. Snaky Baby was thought to be around 12.8 meters in length, so 42 feet, which is roughly the size of a house. The snake was heavy at around 2,500 pounds, so around 1,133 kilos. We never really hear exactly how big Cthulhu is. Lovecraft describes him as a mountain, so I'm assuming pretty spectacular. An extensive Reddit thread on the topic decided the monster would be a modest 160 feet, so that's around 48 meters, much bigger than the snake. And also, while the snake could slither up trees, Cthulhu has wings, and wings really are an advantage. How does the Titanoboa kill? Well, despite being a woesome snake with huge fangs, it wasn't venomous. It could take a good chunk out of you and cause a wound big enough for you to bleed out, but its main jam is squeezing animals to death. It is thought that the Titanoboa was able to crush its prey with a force of 400 pounds per square inch. Would this even hurt the much bigger Cthulhu? Well, perhaps it could, but the Titanoboa would again have to catch the creature first, and once again, wings. Wings! We never really hear about the Cthulhu in combat. All we know is that it supposedly sends its adversaries mad at the point of death. In reality, if the Cthulhu fought the Titanoboa, then it would very much be a case of the Cthulhu flying out of reach of the snake and sending it mad, so it bit itself and squeezed itself to death. What a sight that would be, but like, Come on, how is it ever gonna go any other way? The Cthulhu is an elder god, and the snake, however fearsome and big it was, is just a snake. One final thought for you though. Cthulhu is a great creation. Well done, Lovecraft. But the Titanoboa was real. In terms of the real world, the Titanoboa is much scarier because we know it slithered the earth for 2 million years, whereas Lovecraft's monster has only been engaging minds for 90 years. In this respect, the Cthulhu has some ways to go before we put a crown on that horrifyingly tentacled head.
Alright guys, the gloves are off. Well, metaphorically speaking anyway, as it's pretty apparent that a titanic moray eel and prehistoric giant snake don't exactly necessitate the need for boxing gloves, but you get the picture. Either way, the point is, we're doing it. The two biggest hitters in this continuous hypothetical tete-a-tete, not of words, but instead more sharp fangs, writhing serpentine bodies, and anomalous eel jelly than you can shake a 12-foot fishing pole at. Although it's perhaps not always been at the forefront of your mind, have you ever been daydreaming and wondered who would win in a colossal subaquatic battle between SCP-3000 and the Titanoboa snake of prehistory? What if the Titanoboa snake for SCP-3000? Roll the clip.
Sir, the target's heading right at us. All back full. Aye, sir. All back full.
For the curious amongst you, that clip was from 1998's Godzilla, starring Matthew Broderick, because, as you're about to find out, this particular hypothetical bout is going to be taking place at the bottom of the deep blue sea, and who knows, Godzilla himself is probably lurking somewhere beneath the depths, ready to tag in with SCP-3000 if things get too out of hand. Yeah, I heard that Leviathans ride together and also die together, so go figure. Also, it's pertinent as there will be more than a few submarines waiting in the wings during this bout, which we'll elaborate on later. And as we all know by now, I'm a stickler for cinematic immersion, right? Before we jump into this list though, now is probably high time for us to outline the two particular species in question, SCP-3000 and the Titanoboa. Now, as you all may know, we've extensively covered each of these creatures in several Life's Biggest Question rundowns, and if you'd like to know more about them on a much more visceral level, then now is probably high time to head on over to our playlist and check them out. Also, each of them have pretty much been through the ringer in a wide array of our hypothetical LBQ bouts and earned themselves quite a few scars in the process. The Titanoboa alone has clashed with the Megalodon, the Basilisk snake, a T-Rex, hell, even Cthulhu, and conveniently racked up quite a few skulls for the Skull Throne in the process. SCP-3000 on the other hand has faced off against the mythical Kraken of legend, as well as the terrifying SCP-1128 most recently, both of which have easily fallen to the colossal aquatic might of the anomalous moray eel, and the only creature to date that has successfully taken a chunk out of SCP-3000 has been the world serpent himself, Jormungandr, which is saying something really, because no one messes with Jormungandr, right? Anyway, over in the blue corner we have the undisputed slithering king, measuring in at over 42 feet and weighing in at around 1100 kilograms, the Titanoboa snake. Now this guy is the largest snake ever found in recorded history anyway, which existed on our fair planet Earth around 60 million years ago. The Titanoboa managed to dominate the turbulent landscape and reign as the prime predatory species of the planet after the dinosaurs had faded from the picture, earning itself a place at the top of the food chain through its ambush tactics in the dense jungle undergrowth and its powerful constricting body that could crush its unfortunate prey with a force of over 400 pounds per square inch. But, and this is a big but, its opponent is a little bit on the larger side, and constricting power aside, the Titanoboa's tactics are going to need a little bit of adaptation to say the least. In the red corner we have SCP-3000, perhaps the most powerful anomalous entity contained within the fictional world of the SCP Foundation. There's a lot to it, but for those of you that don't know, SCP-3000 is a giant anomalous serpent that resides at the bottom of the Bay of Bengal, currently under remote containment by the SCP Foundation. Now, we'll try our hardest not to bog you down with its inner mechanics, but essentially there's only three things that you need to know about the entity in question. 1. It's a giant anomalous moray eel. 2. It's absolutely massive, considered to be anywhere between 600 and 900 kilometers in length. And 3. It loves nothing more than eating people, after which it produces a highly potent psychoactive eel jelly on the surface of its skin that shatters the minds of humans and lesser mentally astute sea creatures alike. You got that? Okay. Nice one. Now, from the off, this is a completely one-sided fight. SCP-3000 would swallow the Titanoboa whole like a less than satisfying string of spaghetti, given the fact that, well, the Titanoboa is roughly 40 feet in length and SCP-3000 is anywhere between 600 and 900 kilometers. To put that into perspective, the anomalous eel is the width of the Bay of Bengal and the Titanoboa is a little bit larger than a yellow school bus. Yeah. Game over, guys. But that's not fun, and size isn't exactly everything, because just as David fought Goliath, so too can the Titanoboa fight SCP-3000. He's just going to need a few friends for the process, and by a few friends, I mean an entire swarm of slithering soldiers. And you may also be thinking, yeah, but SCP-3000 resides at the bottom of the ocean, how are they even going to fight? But don't worry about that, because the fact of the matter is, the Titanoboa, as well as its boa constrictor ancestors, are incredibly proficient swimmers and are impeccably adapted to hunt, survive and thrive within the deep dark water. Alright, the stage is set then, but in this hypothetical bout in particular, it's going to take quite a few Titanoboas to even stand a chance at taking it down. But how many exactly? Well, if we work on the basis that SCP-3000 is at its maximum length of 900 kilometers and there are roughly 3,280 feet in 1 kilometer, that would take 82 individual Titanoboa snakes to cover a single kilometer's worth of anomalous eel jelly flesh. At its maximum length of 900 kilometers, it would take 73,800 Titanoboa snakes, and that's just one side of the giant moray eel, so double that, and now we have 147,600 snakes worth of ammunition in our slithering army. And if you couldn't tell already, that's a hell of a lot of giant snakes. And although it seems that we're already bursting at the seams of this hypothetical skin shedding, just stick with me, because trust me, it's the only way that SCP-3000 is even going to take a dent in this fictional showdown. Now, you might think that 147,000 of anything could defeat, well, anything, really. And it seems that for once, this swarm of writhing serpentine monstrosities is about to chow down on the big bad eel at the bottom of the Bay of Bengal like a swarm of ravenous piranhas to a rum ham. But alas, sadly for them, we're yet to address SCP-3000's trap card. The one thing that has been the befuddlement of every other creature that has ever tried to take a chunk out of this anomalous eel. And yeah, you guessed it, it's eel jelly. For those of you that don't know, SCP-3000 maintains the anomalous ability to drive mortal minds to madness simply by existing. The anomalous properties of the substance that it secretes contains the potency to mentally bend the will of any creature, sentient or otherwise, and the fact of the matter remains that now, over 147,000 Titanoboa snakes just began chewing at that very same eel jelly. And you can see where this is going, right? Not only would SCP-3000 win this battle with merely a shake of its tail, without batting an eyelid, under these hypothetical circumstances, it would also now have an unstoppable army of giant Titanoboa snakes. Yeah, now that's a curveball, right? Wait, maybe that's exactly what SCP-3000 was waiting for. Oh, no, what have we done? Titanoboa. Holy moly, the giant prehistoric snake that just keeps on giving, or in many ways, should we say, keeps growing. As if the slithering serpentine leviathan of the jungle wasn't already terrifyingly large enough. You see, over here at Life's Biggest Questions, we've contorted all manners of fantastic beasts and gigantic monsters through our hypothetical redefining machine, giving them extra physical properties or shaking up their genetic makeup in an effort to see how they would have potentially altered the course of ancient history. What if the Titanoboa snake doubled in size? Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that clip was from 2016's Gods of Egypt, which, let's face it, was an absolute disaster of a movie. But hey, the CGI was pretty damn good. And also, on that note of a giant python, if we're going to see what the Titanoboa would be like at twice the size, we may as well give them the ability to breathe fire whilst we're at it, right? Nah, I'm just kidding, that would be a ridiculous idea. Just like the plot of Gods of Egypt, where the answer to the question, would you like dragons or snakes, seemingly was a simple yes. But anyway, enough of that, you get the picture. Let's see what's happening with the old giant snake waiting patiently in the corner. Now, if you're scratching your head thinking, wait, what the hell is a Titanoboa? I would politely inform you that Life's Biggest Questions have a list longer than your arm of equally intriguing and potentially terrifying hypothetical scenarios that we've pitted this ancient creature against. And if you're so inclined to expanding your paleobiological knowledge, then now would be high time to trudge through them and see exactly just what we'd be facing off against here. But for those of you that haven't, let's first take a brief look at the ancient titan of the jungle and just exactly what he's got cooking under the hood. To do that, we'll have to cast our hypothetical gaze back a while, well, 58 million years back to be precise, to a period just a few million years after the fall of the dinosaurs. And now, as you may know from that gaping hole of an asteroid, there was quite a void left behind after the fall of the lizard kings. Now, back in the day, pretty much everything was downright huge. In fact, everything was hotter, wetter, and far, far bigger. Trees had wider leaves down to the massive amount of rainfall, 150 inches or so per year, and temperatures would hover around a stifling mid to high 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Turtles had shells twice the size of a manhole cover, and crocodiles were more than a dozen feet long. But all of them paled in comparison to the Titanoboa, the undisputed lord of the jungle, a snake that measured in at between 42 and 49 feet long and weighing more than a ton at a mean weight of 2,500 pounds. It was as long as a school bus and weighed more than a small rhino. It looked pretty much identical to the modern day boa constrictor, yet behaved more like today's water-dwelling anaconda. To cut a long story short, it was absolutely freaking huge and also terrifying. And to cut an even longer story shorter, it was unrivaled in its swamp jungle home. It was prey to nothing and predator to everything. If it wanted to eat anything, a turtle or crocodile, it would, and it did. But what if it never stopped eating? What if for thousands of years, instead of eventually going extinct due to it succumbing to the shifting climate, it just kept eating, and that 50-foot long Titanoboa eventually doubled in its size? Just imagine the sight of a creature that big, never mind just a snake. 100 feet of pure, unrivaled serpentine flesh. To put that into perspective, the largest animal on the planet and the largest animal ever known to have existed is the blue whale that measured roughly 98 feet in length. This guy, our Titanoboa buddy, would be bigger than that, probably. The thing is though, down to its massive size, the blue whale has evolved to a point where its body is actually pretty constrained to not being a predator. Despite the size of its mouth, the dimensions of a blue whale's throat prevents it from swallowing an object wider than a beach ball, down to the fact that to sustain itself in the ocean, it eats around 40 million krill in a single day, and when fully expanded, its mouth is large enough to hold around 90 tons of food and water. And that's where our problem would lie for the Titanoboa. Being that size, it would have to seriously augment its behaviour to sustain itself in this brave new world. And in the likeliest scenario, that would have probably meant leaving the hot, humid swamps of its native prehistoric Mexico. Hey, you know how the saying goes, right? Big snake in a small pond, I guess. The point is though, here's where things get super difficult for the hypothetical Titanoboa, and at such a huge size it would have had to slither off to pastures new just to sustain itself, with the likeliest prey being giant prehistoric fish that swam in the oceans, down to its genus being dominantly piscivorous. To head into the oceans though, that would have meant sacrificing its most important of amenities. You see, the Titanoboa liked it hot, in fact so hot that the likeliest scenario for the creature's habitat would have had to have averaged around 32 degrees Celsius for it to have thrived. That's exactly why, still to this day, larger ectothermic animals are found in the tropics where it is hottest, and smaller ones are found farther from the equator. For the Titanoboa to have survived and thrived at twice the size, it would have meant moving to pastures new with very specific parameters, somewhere in the ocean that was really, really hot. And guess what? Luckily for the Titanoboa, the oceans were absolutely boiling at this point in history. Well, I say that hyperbolically because they were just really, really warm. The warmest actually being a portion of the North Atlantic where rapid volcanic activity would eventually lead to the creation of Iceland. But there's another problem for our Titanoboa to face, because sadly, it's not all plain sailing or slithering. During the Paleocene, there was quite a shortage of fish. And by shortage, I mean after the whole extinction event thing, nearly 90% of all calcifying plankton were destroyed, and it would take roughly another 7 million years to fully recover. And guess what? Our Titanoboa is a big growing boy, and it's going to take a little bit more than a few ancient clams and snails to keep him fed. You see, whatever the habitat, an apex predator needs its prey, and it's pretty slim pickings at most points of the Paleocene era for a creature the same size as a modern day blue whale. Yeah, there are sharks and stingrays for the most part, but the hunting methods of the Titanoboa are based on physical constriction or straight up whole hog swallowing to feed on its prey, and as we said previously, it would have had to rapidly adapt its feeding processes similar to that of a blue whale to have even existed. And also, there's another problem. You see, at this period of time, it is thought that a particular species of shark was filling in the niche left behind by the sparsely populated ocean, feeding on the other sharks and stingrays that remained. A species of shark known as the Odonus obliquus, the prehistoric ancestor of the Megalodon that measured in at over 40 feet. And guess what? He would have been just as, if not hungrier, than the Titanoboa, favouring the similar warm waters that the giant snake would have had to have favoured. And that can only mean one thing: trouble. Well, you know how the old saying goes, there's always a bigger fish, even if you are a snake. Well, there we have it, our long and short answer to the question, what if the Titanoboa snake doubled in size?
The Titanoboa was a 48-foot long, 2-ton snake that ate crocodiles for breakfast. It was the biggest snake to have ever lived in the history of our planet, and it lived 60 million years ago during the Paleocene era. If Titanoboa were alive today, it would most definitely pose a threat to humanity, most specifically humanity that lived in tropical rainforests near the equator. But if Titanoboa didn't go extinct, would that mean it would be invincible? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, how could you defeat a Titanoboa snake? There are huge snakes like anacondas and pythons that are alive in this day and age that are capable of killing humans and swallowing them whole. Giant pythons have made headlines for swallowing humans, like back in June of 2018, when a 23-foot python swallowed an Indonesian woman whole after she had gone to check on her vegetable garden. This python was killed by the residents of the Indonesian town so they could extract the body of the slain woman from its belly. A 23-foot python is still half the size of Titanoboa, a snake that would have been much harder to kill. So how could you defeat a Titanoboa snake? Well, Titanoboas would be extremely difficult to evade if they were roaming around the jungle, hungry because they hadn't eaten in weeks. 58 million years ago, Titanoboa was the king of the jungle. They required warmer tropical climates and would likely only live near the equator. Titanoboa hunted mostly in water and was a swimmer. It would be very difficult to navigate the swampy terrain of the rainforest, let alone do so when there was a giant snake slithering about. Titanoboa had a huge jaw with sharp teeth pointed toward its throat that kept the prey moving toward its stomach. Like other snakes, its strike was probably very fast, and it moved around effortlessly. But does that mean it would be impossible to defeat a Titanoboa snake? Well, maybe for early humans who didn't know much about it, but I highly doubt indigenous people, if they did manage to live at the same time as Titanoboa, would know nothing about how to defeat or evade Titanoboa. After all, when it comes down to it, Titanoboa was a snake, and snakes are not invincible. In fact, they have one very notable weakness. Sure, to be killed by a Titanoboa would not be a fun experience. Like other snakes, Titanoboa would wrap around its prey so it couldn't escape. Every time its victim exhales, Titanoboa's grip around it gets tighter, eventually causing its prey to suffocate. That's when Titanoboa opens its jaws that are equipped with flexible ligaments and proceeds to swallow its prey whole. Even though this might seem like a terrifying scene, swallowing such a huge victim is not an easy thing for a snake, even a snake as big as old Tebow. Yes, I just called him Tebow, and yes, it does kind of make him seem less scary, but I like that nickname. After Tebow has consumed its prey whole, that is when it's most vulnerable. Titanoboa is going to be stuffed to the brim until it fully digests its meal. I mean, that's pretty relatable. It's pretty difficult to do anything but watch TV after going back for second helpings at your mom's Thanksgiving feast. I can't imagine Titanoboa would have a very easy time doing anything either after eating a whole crocodile. It's not clear how long it would take for Titanoboa to digest a pig or a crocodile, or even a human. The warmer a snake's body is, the faster they digest their food. It takes 3 to 5 days for a regular sized snake to digest its food, and huge anacondas from South Africa eat larger prey, so their digestion takes weeks. I would imagine the same would be true for Titanoboa. The good news is this would be the perfect time to attack a Titanoboa snake. As I previously stated in my last video, if you want to set a trap for this great snake, you could do so using its favorite food source, either a crocodile or a pig. Snakes are known to be notoriously picky eaters. If they don't find any suitable prey, they go weeks without eating. Titanoboa wouldn't be able to help itself if it came across a victim in the jungle so beautifully set out for it to eat. Once Titanoboa scarfs down its meal, it would be pretty much helpless. Indigenous peoples could have attacked Titanoboa using spears or even slicing it in two using a huge sword. And of course, in modern times, when a Titanoboa had consumed its meal, it would be easy to kill it using modern weapons like guns, firing at its head.
It always comes back to the Titanoboa, doesn't it? Millions of views on this channel come from our prehistoric mate, the Titanoboa snake. You love that big snake. You love it so much that you wish it was alive today, right? Well, you may want to take a seat because the reality of living with a slippery apex predator may not be exactly what you're looking for. What if the Titanoboa snake was still alive today? The Titanoboa was first discovered in the lowland tropics of northern Colombia in an area called Carajon. The fossil of the outrageously big snake was discovered in a coal mine, nicely preserved. These days the land is hot and arid, but back back when Snake Bay lived, an estimated 58 million years ago, the land was foresty and swampy. The discovery was made in 2009, so really we haven't known about this snake for very long at all. In the 10 years in which we have studied it, scientists have concluded it was between 13 to 14 meters in length, so roughly up to a maximum of 50 feet, which is around the size of a house. The snake was very heavy at 2,500 pounds, so that's around 1,133 kilos. If you guys need a visual, here is one. As part of the Titanoboa monster snake documentary, the Smithsonian Channel asked sculptor Kevin Hockley to create a full-size replica of this monster snake, and this is what it looked like. Horrifying, right? Big boy snake. The snake was non-venomous, which is a big relief, am I right? Although let's not breathe any premature sighs of relief, because actually this big snake is a hugger, and by that I mean it will squeeze you until you die. The Titanoboa was a constrictor, thought to be able to crush its prey with a force of 400 pounds per square inch. That's some force. Beyond that, it also has some supermassive fangs, all the better for eating you with. These were sharp and needle-like teeth for puncturing soft tissues and holding down prey. So what kind of prey would the Titanoboa get down it? It seems that the apex predator ate live crocodiles. Seriously, this snake has no chill. If it could eat a croc, it would absolutely eat you, no question. But the good news is that Snakey Baby only had to eat once every 6 or so months and could easily last a year with just one meal. While the remains of 28 of the snakes were found, it is impossible to know how big the population of Titanoboas were. They survived for just a 2 million long period from 60 to 58 million years ago. I say just, but humans have only been around for 1/10 of that time, and look how much damage we have done, and we've spawned. Oh, how we've spawned. The Titanoboa, as we know, lived in what was then a swampy part of Colombia. It shares some common traits with snakes that these days live in the Amazon. I don't think the Titanoboa would be bothering the good people of the Caribbean Colombia if it was still alive today, simply because the conditions have changed so much that it wouldn't be able to exist there, perhaps the reason it went extinct in the first place. If the snake did exist, perhaps it too would live in the Amazon, and I'm sure it would have offed a few humans by now. Also, trekking in the Amazon would be literally the scariest activity you could do ever. Perhaps in the past we would have sent our convicts there just to be killed off by the giant snake. Maybe today there'd be a gruesome survivalist reality TV show in which people try and survive in the wilderness without being set upon by giant snake. As we know, our feeble human bones would have been easily crushed by the snake, who would then swallow us whole as a snack. But what about today? Could we take the snake down with bullets? In theory, yes, but we would need a lot of them. The Titanoboa is fast and fleshy. There's a good chance it could swipe at a human a fair distance away before it even got the chance to pull a trigger. The Amazon is the world's largest tropical forest, covering much of Brazil, extending into Colombia, Peru, and small amounts of Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, and Suriname. Anyone watching from these countries? How do you feel about snakes? If the snake was still alive and had made the Amazon its home, it would have had a lot of space to breed. It is thought that the Titanoboa lived in and around the water, so perhaps the Amazon River would be awash with massive snakes. The Amazon River is of course 6,400 kilometers long, so you know. People of Colombia, Brazil, and Peru may find their water sources pretty terrifying. In fact, had these snakes prevailed over the past 58 million years instead of dying out, perhaps cities like Maunas, which now has a population of 2 million, simply would not exist. If they did, then giant snakes would be a hazard. While this city is absolutely bumping now, there have been population crashes in the Amazon history. Maybe there wouldn't have been any at all if there were giant snakes lurking about. I feel like the main issue here is if the Titanoboa snake was still alive, what else would be surviving and thriving? If it were just the snakes alone, I'm pretty sure we could take them, but what about all its prehistoric friends? Back when the massive snake the size of a bus was reigning terror, there were also giant reptiles and turtles and massive crocodiles. The Titanoboa likely died out because of changing temperatures and a lack of proper habitat. But had it and its massive mate survived, including a 7-foot-long lungfish, 1, the conditions for the evolution of humans may not have been right, but 2, maybe we would have evolved, but we we wouldn't have been top of the food chain. Maybe we would have been gobbled up. Another way in which the Titanoboa could be alive today is if we Jurassic Parked it, like made a huge zoo of old extinct and scary animals for times gone by. Scientists are indeed today working on bringing back woolly mammoths, but if we can learn anything from science fiction, playing God and bringing things back from the prehistoric dead is a bad idea, not least because we may not have as much control as we think we do. So that is that. Riddle me this: what would you do if the Titanoboa was still alive? Would we be living in some kind of crazy Hollywood sci-fi fiction world where everyone screams and there are snakes everywhere? Would we bang it up in the Chamber of Secrets? Would Voldemort use it as his familiar? Would it speak Parseltongue? What do you think it would be like to be swallowed alive by such a beast?